To South America, where a Chilean prosecutor is investigating a dozen police officers accused of torturing protesters. This is part of what has been days of protests and clashes which have killed at least 20 people. RT's Faran Fronczak has the details.
Now check out this video that's been seen all over Twitter. This is footage coming after other video was seen of protesters throwing Molotov cocktails at police after police used tear gas. Now you can see these kids, they literally bust through their school gates there, running towards the protests of where the violent protests are. Now, again, the footage coming after other video was seen of these protesters throwing Molotov cocktails at police after police used tear gas and water cannons on protesters in Chile's capital of Santiago. 2 police officers were engulfed in flames and other officers came running with fire extinguishers to put them out. A Chilean prosecutor is investigating over a dozen police officers accused of torturing protesters. Now, the investigation surrounds 2 separate cases during a 9-day state of emergency in Santiago earlier this month. In one case, 2 officers allegedly beat and tortured a young man while he was handcuffed. Here's the prosecutor talking about what some of these protesters were left with after their clash with police. Take a listen.
Hablamos de trauma ocular grave, hablamos de fractura nasal.
We are talking about severe eye damage. We are talking about broken noses. We are talking about broken ribs. And for that, 12 police officers belonging to the Special Forces will be put on trial for torture by the court of Ñuñoa.
12 police officers belonging to the Special Forces, they're going to be on trial for torture. Now, the latest protests come after a short break in demonstrations in which 20 people died in clashes amid looting and arson, forcing the cancellation of 2 upcoming major international summits. The unrest began last month over a subway fare hike in which that has now been rescinded. Again, so far 20 people have been killed as far as these violent clashes. And Steve, according to human rights groups, around 800 police officers, they've been injured in these protests. Around 1,600 protesters have been hospitalized. And again, Steve, at least 20 people have died. For News Views Hughes, I'm Faran Fronczak.
And to learn more, we turn to RT producer Enrique Rivera, who has been following this story very closely. Thanks for joining me here on set. So these protests are a very big deal, and they've surprised a lot of people. So tell us why this is all happening.
Well, it is a huge surprise, and it is a big deal. I mean, 20 people killed in 3 weeks of protest. This is really unheard of in Chile. Now, Chile really has been considered the bastion of political and economic stability in Latin America for much of the past 3 decades. No, they're kind of the United States of South America. No, you have 2 major political parties. One is kind of like the Democrats, one is kind of like the Republicans, and they kind of switch sides. No, I mean, one takes office for 1 term or 2, and then another takes office for 1 term or 2. And it's rather stable that way, unlike many other countries in the region. And so it is a bit of a surprise.
And you mentioned, you know, your first comment was the 20 people killed. I think it's the violence that, and you tell me, that is shocking most people when they look at what's going on in Chile.
Yeah, no, it really is shocking. I mean, so last time we saw protests like these were very similar, actually, and that was in 2011. Same president was in office. Huge protests, same organizations, same demands. The movement kind of fizzled out, but that was about 2.5 years, I don't know if you remember, of ongoing protests,
right, yeah.
Massive protests. But in those 2.5 years, only 1 person was killed. In these 3 weeks, you've seen 20 people killed.
So what? Why is that? Are there more radical elements influencing the protests, or are people just more disturbed by what they're protesting than last time around?
You know, that's a great question. I mean, when this all started, there were reports of looting and explosions in buildings. You know what I mean? That's something that we didn't quite see in 2011.
All right, so let's look at it from you know, the relationship with the United States and people who might live here from Chile. What are the ramifications? How does this affect the United States at all?
Well, Chile is really the United States' closest ally in South America. Well, Chile and Colombia, and in recent years, Brazil. But Chile really has been a very close ally since 1973, really. And so I can guarantee you that you know, the offices dedicated to South America and to Chile within the State Department and within the various intelligence communities are paying very close attention to this.
Yeah.
Because what if the protesters get what they want, which is a radically new government,
Yeah, that's bad news for the United States.
for the perceived interests
Yeah.
of the United States
Yeah.
government.
Yeah. All right, listen, I appreciate your insight and your perspective and sharing it with us. Thank you very much.
Of course.
It's hard to clear through the debris and get right down to the nitty-gritty that is real news.
New details are coming to light in the case of Jeffrey Epstein as more
Spread between the 2-year Treasury yield and the 10-year Treasury yield.
Several hundred students are staging a sit-in.
the Amazon rainforest, and the blame game is underway. It's time for RT America. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button.